Continuing with the outline on the third chapter, Jesus the Healer and the concept of sin, in this video I want to speak about this concept of sin. I will retitle this chapter as Jesus the Healer and Hamartia, because I realized that the word sin carries a lot of baggage and is, as I've been saying, one of the most misunderstood words in the scriptures, and it's fundamental to the understanding of what the early churches and what the figures in the scriptures and even Jesus himself was speaking about. As I've been through the other chapters, I've been saying that they were speaking about a force, about a father, about a ruling in the universe, about a higher cosmology. And the word sin is one of the main reasons why a lot of people just run away from the scriptures and run away from anything having to do with the early traditions, the early understandings, because they correlate the word sin with the dogmatic narrative, and there's a reason for this. There's a valid reason for this, and I will be speaking about this in this video. But also I will try to explain what could be the real meaning about this concept of sin. And I will be speaking about Hamartia, the original concept from the Greek tragedies and from the words that were actually used in the scriptures, not the translation in English, not the guilt-ridden understandings that have been going throughout time, but I'm going to be going into the original concept of sin, Hamartia. Before I move forward, I would like to remind you that if you want to join the growing discussion on consciousness and would like to be notified on the latest scientific discoveries and theories surrounding this topic and how they connect to ancient mythologies and philosophies, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, as I'll try to upload at least one video per week as I continue with the outline. First, I'll go into some of the definitions of this word Hamartia. According to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, it says Hamartia arose from the Greek verb harmatanian, meaning to miss the mark or to err. Aristotle introduced the term in the Poetics to describe the error of judgment, which ultimately brings about the tragic hero's downfall. As you can imagine, the word is most often found in literary criticism. However, news writers occasionally employ the word when discussing the unexplainable misfortune or missteps of uber-celebrities regarded as immortal gods and goddesses before being felled by their own shortcomings. It's this idea of missing the mark or to err. Those are the main definitions used for this word Hamartia. It has to do with the ancient Greek tragedies. It is a flow of judgment, a flow of character in the when they were driving their narratives towards somewhere. There's even a little bit of a moral insinuation in that the character was their passions were too big, or their compassion was too much for another character, and that led to a downfall, that led to a tragic ending in the story. This is the concept of Hamartia strictly in the Greek terms. We have to understand Aristotle and these Greek tragedies were years before the whole events in the scriptures. The concept of Hamartia precedes Jesus and precedes his concept of sin. The word that we find in the scriptures comes from this Greek understanding and not the other way around. If we go to Wikipedia, which oftentimes is not the best source of information, but at the end is the common knowledge, is the collective knowledge on a specific topic, I found something interesting. It says, in his introduction to the S.H. Butcher translation of Poetics, which is this Aristotle's Poetics that they're speaking about, Francis Ferguson describes Hamartia as the inner quality that initiates, as in Dante's words, a movement of spirit within the protagonist to commit actions which drive the plot towards its tragic end, inspiring in the audience a build of pity and fear that leads to a purgation of those emotions or catharsis. It also says that in Wikipedia that it's used in Christian theology. Hamartia is sometimes used to mean acts of sin by omission or commission in thought and feeling or in speech and actions. It's the fall of man from original righteousness that resulted in humanity's innate propensity for sin. That is the original sin. So as we can see, there are a lot of understandings of this sin, but we do have the collective understanding that, and the original word in the scriptures, hamartia, means to miss the mark and is related to this movement in spirit, as they say, to this character, inner flow or inner being that creates a consequence in the world, which might give us a little bit of insight into what we are truly speaking about when we think about sin. The word in Hebrew is kata, which is the same as the other one. It means to miss the mark, to err, to do wrong. It's not strictly related to the modern dogmatic notion that we have today. This notion comes from somewhere else. Going through some of the other definitions of this kata Hebrew word, it says do wrong, commit a mistake or an error, make to miss the mark, miss the way, Ethiopic, fail to find or have, sometimes sin, especially in derivatives, miss a goal or way, go wrong, sin. So we can see the pattern in these words and their understandings, even in the characters, how they made the wrong decision and something happened. So the core understanding that we get from the definitions of these words is to miss the mark, to miss the way. Now, a lot of the theological discussions about this missing the mark is what is the mark? And I believe this is where a lot of the current pastors who are beginning to understand this work, who now have internet in their pockets, in their cell phones, and they can go and Google everything they want, and they can read the scriptures in Greek and everything. And now some of them are realizing that hamartia means something different, that what is mostly engraved in people's mind, having to do with the dogmatic narrative. They understand that it's a different conception, but now where they go wrong, in my opinion, in having all the other philosophies that I've been talking about and the modern evidence from quantum theories, etc., is that they still put this idea, have this idea of the way, miss on the mark of a dogmatic sense of worshipping God. And this is not what this is about. If we think what is the mark, what is the goal, we can have a different understanding of this if we look at the data. When we think about the scriptures and the original words, we think about what was the way for them back then. It was to stray from the path of God, to stray from God, or to stray from the people, or do wrong to God, or do wrong to the people. That's the Jewish interpretation of sin. And this adds the morality issue to it, and this adds a different conception to the whole thing. As I've said in previous videos, when I was speaking about the principle of aseity, I spoke about how perhaps Moses had a transcendental experience where he contacted his higher self. Now, today we have all these theories about and data about people channeling messages from higher intelligence or from non-physical intelligences, and we have data on people going through these transcendental experiences in the form of entheogen experiences, near-death experiences, where they meet these entities or they gain this knowledge somehow that we are all connected, we are all part of the same consciousness. And if we think about the scriptures and about the message of Jesus and some of the other figures, they're speaking about this. They're speaking about how we are all different conceptions, different pieces or interpretations of this larger consciousness. And this is what these people who are going through these transcendental experiences are experiencing, that we are all part of the same. We are God experiencing itself in pieces through different perspectives. For what reason? We're not entirely sure, but this seems to be the message when people have these transcendental experiences. As I said, there are many ways to have these experiences, near-death experiences, OBEs, entheogens, revelations, contact with higher intelligences, channeling, hypnotic regressions. There are many ways that people are coming to the same conclusion. We call them enlightening, we call them understanding, we call them awakened. There's this whole new age movement that is arising coming from these ideas. But now what is the reality behind all of this? We can find in the scriptures that why is this happening? Why were they saying this? Jesus said that the goal is to glorify the Father through the Son. This is the whole idea, that this larger consciousness is experiencing itself through us. We are part of the same thing. I've spoken about this concept coined in psychology in the early 70s about mystical psychosis, where people who go through these experiences, they start to feel this connection with everything and this oneness, this separation from the ego into the larger consciousness. Now, putting this into perspective, this might help us to understand what morality, this concept of morality surrounding sin might be all about. As I said, in the Jewish tradition, this concept of going wrong, straying from the path, missing the goal, it's often correlated with the dogmatic narrative, but in reality, it might be correlated with a fundamental truth, and that is that we are all part of the same consciousness. So when Jesus was asked what is the biggest sin, what is the biggest transgression, and he went on to explain the whole thing about there's two things that matter. One is to love God with everything you have, with all your mind and all your words and all your mental power. And the other one is to love your neighbor. Because in essence, we're part of the same thing. So if we have this concept as a base, and we have the whole idea that these people going through transcendental experiences are contacting higher intelligences, telling us that we ought to live better lives and create better societies, and this is why the commandments came into place. Do not kill your neighbor, do not steal from them, do not hurt them, not physically, not mentally, not emotionally, because we are all part of the same thing. And if we put into perspective that we have this evidence from near-death experiences, this fact that comes almost in every near-death experience, where people go through their life's actions and they have this judgment, not a judgment, but a life review. They have this life review where they experience what others experience through their actions. We can see that these ancient understandings of sin, these ancient philosophies are starting to make sense and to connect with the modern data and the modern evidence that we have on altered states of consciousness. This is what this channel and this book and this outline is all about. Now, when we think why is the word sin, why does it carry so much baggage? Why is it so misunderstood? It's easy. People just didn't understand this higher conception, this higher understanding that the early figures in the scriptures were trying to tell us, were trying to explain. They just couldn't grasp it. They couldn't grasp these ideas to which we have modern data and modern evidence. So what they did is they created their own churches. As I've been saying, Paul the Apostle may have had a near-death experience where he realized some things, where he saw some things, but perhaps what he made out of it was not the final truth. Perhaps this was his interpretation, just in the same way as many having these modern transcendental experiences come with their own conclusions about what it's all about. So these went on, and the early churches started to evolve, and then during the Middle Ages, everything shifted. It was just about a way to control people. We have this dogmatic narrative where anything that the kings or the rulers thought was against society or against their outlook in the world was considered a sin. So this is why we have during the Middle Ages things like not paying taxes or not abiding by the king's orders or lines of thought. This was considered a sin. Today, in modern society, we still have lines of thought and religions which, in their failure to understand all of this, and based upon the fear they have been instructed to have, going back to these feudal origins of sin, we have ideas like having children who are not baptized going to hell just because they have this idea of an evil God who will punish them. They have ideas like premarital sex or what they would consider adultery or things like that, where having guilt in human experiences or human expressions might be considered a sin just because they just didn't understand it, and they actually think that these things are gonna send them to hell. We have ideas like not going to church on a Sunday, this is a sin and you're gonna go to hell for that, or to purgatory, and things that do not make any sense. And this is because people just simply do not understand the concept of sin. They do not understand the actual meaning, the actual origins, which might in the end be a simple but larger cosmological reality of consciousness. This is one of the ideas behind sin. This is one of the conceptions of sin, of Hamartia, missing the mark, missing that goal. But in the next video, I'm gonna be speaking about another conception that Jesus had on sin, which is more related to the structure of our thoughts, to our inner being, and it connects to these ideas of aligning, of mental manifestation, as I said in the previous video where I was speaking about self-healing. In that verse, he speaks about how that paralyzed man was in that situation because of his sins. He says, what is easier to say, get up and walk, or your sins are forgiven? So in many instances, he perceives these quote-unquote sins as being the cause for the illness. So it has more to do with an inner development, as one of the definitions said that I spoke in this video. It's a movement in spirit. It has to do with the structure of our thoughts. It has to do with this connecting with the kingdom of heaven, as he talked about it, with meditation, with perception, and as I've been speaking about, as we have the modern evidence on stress, on the placebo effect. So it has to do with a core principle which is present in Eastern traditions, in occultism, in these modern transcendental experiences, and which is more closely related to mentalism. If you're on the path of finding the truth about reality and our purpose as humans on Earth, the information that I have to share concerns you. After a lifetime of research in philosophies ranging from Buddhism to the occult, I've encountered themes and patterns along some baffling information that is beginning to be seriously studied by science. A Rational Divine Outline, The Ghost of Jesus, is the first iteration of this project, where I analyze the message of Jesus without dogmatism, fanaticism, or religious bias. You can find my work available on Amazon on the link below. If you find this work valuable, consider subscribing, sharing, and following me on social media, as it'll help others in the same path to find this information. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.